is Zoughbi Zoughbi. You can call me by either name. I am an Arab Palestinian living in Bethlehem, looking at the situation from the conflict transformational perspective. It's great to be with you, and I asked many times, what shall I talk about? And then I think it's best to start with a joke. And sorry for those who have heard it. Israeli and Palestinian were traveling together, let's say to Winchester, to give a talk about the situation there. And while they were traveling on the airplane, the Palestinian wanted badly to go to the bathroom. So he got up from his chair, moved towards the WC, and he saw occupied. He said, an Israeli inside. They continued, and the Israeli at the immigration office named Shlomo, date of birth 67, place of birth Tel Aviv, occupation. He said, no, I am for tourism, not for occupation. What shall we talk about? This is the situation, and this is what we live in. And by the way, before I start talking about it, I am here not to ask you to be pro-Palestinian, anti-Israeli, but to be pro-justice. Justice for all. And based on restorative, that redresses the wrongs rather than revenge. You know, the situation there is not at ease. It is getting worse and worse. And the things that you have for granted, we die for. There is a theft of spontaneity. I cannot grab my passport and say, I'd like to leave and travel. We are controlled by all means. There are 613 checkpoints at least there, in the West Bank. And the number differs from time to time, according to studies. But the issue, these checkpoints are in the West Bank, not on crossing border to another country. And these limit the freedom of movement of people. And there, when we travel, we measure our distances by how many checkpoints we pass through. While here, we are measuring it by how many miles. And probably in the last 7 days, we traveled a lot through friends, people who really care, more than a year of traveling at home. And you can imagine that it's easier for us to come and sleep overnight in Andover or Winchester or anywhere than just coming to Jerusalem next month. So we are in such a difficult situation where our freedom is violated, our human rights is violated, settlements are built. The occupied territories of 1967 consists of 22.7% of the historic land. Yet Israel took 1948 and continues to build more settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, of course. It becomes like the Swiss cheese. It's not really tasty like Swiss cheese. Big holes, big settlements, very developed, very sophisticated, industry, business, agriculture, and Palestinian towns and villages and camps. And nowadays there are 712,000 Israeli Jewish settlers in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. And to give you an example, smaller example, about the city of Bethlehem. Bethlehem is surrounded by 23 settlements with a population of 90,000. And the area of Bethlehem is totally, fragmented. 87% of it is under the Israeli control, either for settlements, bypass roads, or the wall is built around it. And for those of you who have been there, so what does mean a wall around it? And it is really very sad to see a wall in the occupied territories after 28 years of wall built in Berlin. And it is twice the height of Berlin Wall, 5 times Berlin length. And on top of that, it is built mostly on the West Bank land, 80% of it. Imagine that your neighbor's dog is irritating your garden, and you ask him or her, please keep the dog in your garden. And the agreement was to build a wall, and it will be on your garden. Not only 80% on our land, but also further fragmenting the land. Not only Bethlehem Governorate is separated from Hebron, or Nablus, or Jericho, but also the area of Bethlehem is separated from each other. Eastern villages separated from the western villages. And it is really sad to see this continues more and more under the pretext of security. And all of the violations of what Israel is practicing is under the pretext of security. And security is a golden calf, a new golden calf that Israel is worshiping. Everything is justified by the slogan of security. The wall is built for security, human rights violations for security. The family reunification is revoked because of security. Many Palestinians marry their cousins or people from Jerusalem. And we are one people. But they are not allowed to have family reunification. Needless to say that who are marrying Israeli Palestinians or Palestinians inside the Green Line, whatever is the term. And also Palestinians who marry Arab people or Palestinians who live as a result of the Nakba in Jordan or Lebanon or Syria cannot go and live in the West Bank. Or Palestinians marry British or American or foreigner. Also, they need to have a permit, a visa every 3 months. Why? The law of Israel of 1950 allows any person who claims that his or her great-great-grandmother is Jewish could come and live in Palestine, Israel, anywhere without any restrictions. I don't know what they call that. So the Palestinian land is fragmented. The Palestinian people are further fragmented. We have people who live inside 1948, people live in diaspora, East Jerusalem, Gaza Strip, the Palestinian refugees in Syria, and we are 12 million people. 6 million are refugees, and as a result of the Nakba in 1948. And I really try to speak good English, but sometimes I try to omit the past tense. The Nakba is not in the past, wasn't in 1948. The Nakba has been happening since 1948. Until this moment, houses are demolished, land is taken, settlements are built, creating facts on the ground. And, bypass roads in the West Bank are more built on the Palestinian land, creating more divisions. And I believe when Martin Luther King is alive, he will write a letter from Bethlehem jail, from Jericho jail, from Nablus jail. We are becoming like Palestinians. The term Palestinians was used in South Africa. Now we are living in Palestinians, in the big prison and the small prison. And in fact, 1/3 of the male population have been in jails. 15,000 women have been in jail. You can imagine what kind of life the Palestinians are living. Children have lost their childhood. They are not living their childhood. Their innocence has been attacked. Elderly have no dignity. Soldiers who are 17 or 16 trying to humiliate the other folks who might be, older than them. And the domain of control is not only on issues of movement, but also you cannot import and export economically. If you compare the GNP per capita in Palestine to GNP in capita in Israel, you will see in Israel at least $25,000, $27,000. Palestinians are less than $1,000. Not only that, unemployment is high because of the siege, because of lack of freedom, because you cannot do your business. And Gaza is in a worse situation than the West Bank. Gaza, could you imagine, Gaza is a big prison, 365 square kilometers. There is siege from the land, from the water, from the air. 70% of the people are refugees coming from 1948 land, mostly. They couldn't go to Egypt. They couldn't come to West Bank. Malnutrition is there. Children have no good food. Hospitals are not in good shape. Electricity is cut off most of the time. And when Gaza was flooded, things are really disastrous. I know it is not easy to hear that. I know for some who live here it's not easy, but what I see and what I live is what I convey to you. And many of you have been there. So we talk about settlements. We talk about prisons. We talk about confiscation of land. Now almost 50% of the West Bank is under Israel's control directly. And the other 50, the Israeli forces could come and anytime, could take anyone in prison. And Israel is using different laws to continue with its control. Could you imagine that 1860 Ottoman laws are used up to this moment? 1945 emergency British regulation laws are used, and when British left us, Israel verified them. The British nullified them, and Israel seems more British than the people. And then we have the Jordanian laws, because we were under Jordan from 1948 to 67. And there are 2,300 military Israeli laws and more that deal with our daily life. From having family reunification to me as a family. My wife is a tourist in my home. Every 3 months I should renew her visa, while as I heard, 1950 gives anyone who claims that he's Jewish could come and have any partner anywhere. And it's not a personal story, it is the story of the what shall we talk about? There is no geographical continuity between West Bank and Gaza and East Jerusalem. And of course, more facts on the ground is created in Jerusalem. More settlers in East Jerusalem. In West Jerusalem, there has been ethnic cleansing. Palestinian Muslims and Christians were kicked out from 1948. In East Jerusalem, more settlements are built. And more pressure are put on the Palestinians. We shouldn't allow Jerusalem to be under one religious or political control. Jerusalem, as a person who believes in conflict transformation, should be shared city, should be open, and could serve as the two capitals for Israel and Palestine, but also is the spiritual capital for the Abrahamic religions. Otherwise, it will not lead to peace. There will be no peace if no, there is no restorative justice. As a person who believes in conflict transformation, I think it is the time to call things by their name, to call a spade a spade. Occupation is evil. And we are not against Israel or Jews, we are against the occupation. The occupation should finish. 1967 border, Israel should withdraw from it. No question about it. Israel should abide with 242 and 338 resolutions. We need that the two people should coexist. And the occupation doesn't only demoralize us, also demoralizes Israelis. I know these young soldiers who are at checkpoints or anywhere, when they go home, they will project their anger on their fiancés, on their children, on their families. In Palestine, there is no single child who doesn't have trauma. We are hostages all to trauma. And you can see it in children. They live in fear. And we don't have the post-traumatic stress disorder. It is an ongoing trauma, current trauma, layer after layer. You can see the kids have involuntary urination or nightmares, unhealthy conditions for them. They walk while they are sleeping. They are terrified. And through our work, we don't want to curse darkness. We like humble things. We try to help the kids to have a safe environment, to express themselves, to have stories to be told through art therapy, through theater, through dancing, through eating together, through playing together. We don't want them to be living in such terrible situation. And we work with youth, because the youth are agents for change. But the youth are prisoners. They cannot travel freely. But we don't want them to have hierarchy of pain or to compete for victimhood. We don't want them to be aggressive. We want to be assertive. We want them to know their rights. And as I always say, I'm not willing to kill someone to go to Jerusalem to practice my religious rights or my national rights. I'm willing to sacrifice myself, but not to kill someone. Because I believe Jews, Muslims, Christians are all created in the image of God. And we need to take care of each other and to work for justice and reconciliation, but not cheap grace. Occupation is not tolerable. And I think we need to work harder. And this will not be achieved unless three dimensions of the struggle together. The Palestinians to continue their struggle non-violently to get rid of the occupation. And I say non-violently because we want to deprive the Israeli government from an enemy. The pro-peace camp, pro-justice camp in Israel, they are small, but they are a ray of hope to help Israel to get rid of being the occupier. And many times I tell my friends, who are more, some of them sympathetic with Israel, I say, if you want to save the soul of Israel, help Israel to get rid of the occupied territories. Help Israel to get rid of the occupied territories. I believe there is nothing called impossible. Everything is possible. And we need to work on the narratives. I like what our poet Mahmoud Darwish said about the conflict. It is a clash of narratives. And of course, there is no one single Israeli narrative or one single Palestinian narrative. There are the narratives in Israel from the peace camp. If you listen to Jeff Halper, Women in Black, Yesh Gevul, Israeli community against torture, against house demolition, there is a narrative. There is a narrative of right wing, there is a narrative of left wing, there is a narrative of settlers, there is a narrative of religious people. At the same time, in Palestine, there are many narratives. They say between two Israelis there are 3 opinions. Also between 2 Palestinians there are 5 opinions. In a way or another, we are like one group coming from a Semitic background. And many times I look at this conflict as the dysfunctional family of Abraham. Whether we like it or not, Christian, Muslim, Jews belong to Abraham. And you know, family feud is worse than any other feud. And so, how to deal with this? That's why we try to let people express their narratives freely. Let them speak. Let them transform their anger. The challenge is always how to transform the garbage of anger, the garbage of hate into flower and tree of compassion. It's not easy not to be angry. You know, you might go to take a shower and there is no water. Because the high percentage of water is taken by Israel. But how to deal with that? And we learn how to recycle water. Use it for the washing machine, and then to rinse the floor, and then use it for toilet, and sometimes use it for watering the flowers or trees. So we need to change our lenses and move forward to learn from other history and places in the world. Let us look at South Africa. The apartheid regime is no longer there. Let's look at Northern Ireland, how the Republicans and conservatives share the government. Now we talk about the role of mediator. George Mitchell was able to strike a deal in Northern Ireland with the help of people here. I think also maybe the quartet will play a very constructive role. I mean, the United States, Russia, UN, and the Europeans. And we need them to work, because I believe, as a Palestinian, and I think Israelis also, are exhausted. They want a way out. We don't want to live in this mess, and we don't want to continue with this conflict. Let us get rid of the occupation, and let people relate to each other in a more healthy way. And of course, when we talk about conflict transformation, we need to embark on education, on the children's level up to high level, based on respect of others, based on mutuality, reciprocity, inclusivity. You know, exclusivity is the enemy of every human being. And we need to focus on the dialogue of cultures and dialogue of religions. We are in a global village, whether we like it or not. And Palestine, Israel, is very small land. Maybe it is the size of Wales, 27,000 square kilometers. But it has lots of potentials. So we need to work on the education that help both sides to see different reality. And also the sermons in the churches, in the mosques, in the synagogues, not to preach hate. And we need to deal with the etiology of it. That doesn't mean we shouldn't call things by their name. We need to emphasize to call a spade a spade. Because in Amos, what God is asking us, what does the Lord require from thee? To do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with thy God. And maybe to tell the truth, and you know the truth and will liberate you, and might anger some of us. But it's better to be angry and not to have hate, and to change, and to create a change. If we all want to live in dignity, we need to create a change. We want to have a jump start of the peace process. And as Palestinians, we love to be at the table and not on the table. And our leadership at this moment. I remember many times we met with President Abbas just on Christmas. He was visiting Bethlehem, and there was a reception on 25th of December, and there's another reception on the January 7th, and people were annoyed to tell him, look, what is happening? There is no land left. And he would say, negotiation and dialogue. Some Palestinians feel that he sold out, but he emphasizes the negotiation and dialogue. and he is interested in dialogue that lead to two-state solution. And the Palestinians at large believe in the non-violent struggle. And for me, it is a way of life and it's a principle. And I can summarize how many ways that the non-violent struggle we use from the turn of the 20th century. Direct action, and if you look at Gene Sharp and about his ways that he expresses in his book about non-violent resistance, Palestinians use it. From strikes, from vigils, from boycotting, from different things. Second, non-cooperation. We don't like to see cooperation with the oppressor, but we are happy to have a dialogue with Israelis. Because Israel as a government, any government, would like to have patron-client relationship and spoils the people and corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, lack of power also corrupts. We need to build institutions. This is the third way of non-violence. Building institutions on the government level as well as on the grassroots level, on the private level. Fourth, create networks and solidarity groups. Whatever the number, 4 or 5, we talk about steadfastness. I am really happy and thanks God that we are still sane. Could you imagine if the internet now is cut in your home or in your school or university for 2 hours, how the people will be? If you queue to pass in a word and it was jammed for 3 or 4 hours, how do you feel? But we have been queuing in line to go from place to place, and many times we are not allowed. But still our people see, and they deal in a civilized way despite of many of the critics that we have to each other and the challenges and the things that we are not happy with. And the other point of non-violent struggle is the diplomatic struggle. The Palestinians appeal to the United Nations. There is a recognition now. We are becoming a member of the UNESCO, and there are 20 other UN resolutions that we should be accepted on equal footing with Israel. And I say with Israel, not in replace of Israel. For those people who think that we are talking about, punitive justice, let them hear it clear. We are talking about restorative justice. We are not calling for retaliation. We want to live. And the 6th point, when people call for BDS. The whole idea is to end the occupation by all means. Occupation should be ended. And I think we need the Israeli peace groups. We need the Jewish peace groups and the Jewish people abroad to think of ways to help their government, not to help us to get rid of the occupied territories. Because in the long run, it's not healthy for them. And nowadays, we see Kerry is trying, Secretary Kerry, to jumpstart the peace process and move forward. As another Palestinian Christian, I believe in heavenly Jerusalem. I like to live in earthly Jerusalem. And I say I love to live in earthly Jerusalem, not exclusively, inclusively. As a person of faith, I believe in life after death, but I like to live my life before death. And I like to live it with Shlomo, with Shlomit, with Muhammad, with George, with Peter, with everyone. I want to live it with you. I'll stop here, open the floor for a question.